Welcome to Thank God You're Not My Child. Remember, it's a comedy podcast where I talk about whatever I want to. And this week, I got to meet some family, or should I say future family, because I'm getting married in September. Remember? Yeah, I know. It's strange. Remember, I'm getting married in September, flying to Alaska. Yes. And I got to meet some Alaskan family. And so I want to talk about stories that they told. It's going to be sweet. So hold on. So I do believe the oldest one that was at the house in Hot Springs this weekend, family, was 85 years old. And I'm a big person. You need to listen to people's stories. I do not care if they are 2 years old and they have a story or if they're 92-year old. You can learn about people by listening to the stories. And so we listened to a lot of stories. And there was just a few that just made you go, oh, that was weird. Something like that happened. And it's just so exciting. And so I want to talk about a few of the stories. The first one we want to talk about is a couple of stories that blend together because a glass eyeball? Yeah, I know. Sounds weird. So one of them said that their dad, maybe around the 1920s or so, there was he was a barber, but he did a lot of things. I mean, he could weld and everything, back when those good men worked and did anything they could to provide for their families, okay, that's a whole shit soapbox. I don't want to get on those. I know some good man that if they'd have to go out and cook some french fries at McDonald's to feed their kids, they fucking would. And that's the kind of man I'm talking about, if you know what I mean. And so he's cutting hair and just, normal haircut, didn't think anything about it. And he said his dad told him that all of a sudden this guy's eyeball pops out and rolls across the floor. Now, not to panic. It was a glass eyeball. When he started telling the story, everything in me went a little morbid and thought, oh my gosh. Was it like still hooked in? Was it like, was it bloody? Was it what? That's not the story, people. That was my mind going. You know what I mean? So he said it was just something very odd that when he always remembered his dad telling him that story. And then as years go past and he grew up and got married and his brother had a daughter. And when she was little, this is the barber's great granddaughter. Yeah, I do believe. Anyway, she ended up with cancer when she was little and she has a glass eye. Now, it's not 1920 anymore. These glass eyes are beautiful. And he told me about a story about her getting pulled over from the police a while back. And of course, that glass eye isn't going to work like the other eye, even though they're beautiful and they've come a long way. And she's beautiful. The policeman shined the light and said, have you been drinking tonight and wanted to do a drug test? And she told him, no, I just have a glass eye. And of course, everything in me since was the bloody eye? Did it pop out? Did it roll across the ground? That morbid person says, please tell me the policeman said, prove it. I know, that would be weird. But if I was a policeman and you told me you had a glass eye, you're proving it. I'm just saying. But what's the odds that this person that had an eyeball roll out while he was doing hair in the 1920s would have a granddaughter that would have a glass eyeball and then have asked by a policeman to prove it? You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? That it just vibed together in the same family, and it was just really something that you don't hear at all. How many stories have you heard together in the same family about a glass eyeball? See? I'm telling you. There was also some fishing stories, of course, because in Alaska, man, I've heard stories about salmon fishing. And I don't want to tell anybody, but I don't really like seafood. But when I'm in Alaska, I did promise him I would try the fresh seafood from Alaska because I've been told it is completely different. So we shall see what the answer is when I come back after September. So fishing. When I was little, I've mentioned before that I just didn't have the patience for fishing. I loved it, and my whole family did it. We'd go as a family, and after a couple of fishing poles that I threw in because I just was a brat, I mean, let's be honest, I don't know how many times the fishing pole can slip out of your hands, if you know what I mean. After that, I ended up with a cane pole. You know what a cane pole is? It is the sign that you're not going to catch a damn fish. That's what it is. And if you've fished and caught with the cane pole, DM me and tell me how to do it and what to fish with, because I can't do it. So yeah, so we're going to talk about fishing stories. So one story was about fishing, and I guess the stuff you know, because I use big old worms. You know, I put a big old worm on a fishing hook. You know, I get all of that. And he said that they use like eggs or guts or something, and they put them in a little netty type thing, and then they put it over this hook and they fished. And he said he caught this really big salmon. We're talking big. And they went down with the claw to bring it on the boat because you had to hook it. And the guy got the mouth, and the fish ended up getting away because the claw, you know, where the hook was in the claw, it just slipped. And so this huge, unbelievable salmon fish got away. And then a couple hours later, someone else caught a fish, and sure enough, they clawed it up, and it was the same fish that got away because his little hook was in there, and that was his fish that got away a couple hours earlier. It was caught twice. And I know you guys fish and have stories like that, you know, because you can say, all fish look alike, but they don't. We know they don't. So, yeah, that was a pretty interesting story too. You know what I mean? Another funny one was, as one of the kids, he said, we went fishing. He had a new fishing pole, and he dropped it in the water. Remember I was talking about, oh, I let it go. Well, that was the only fishing pole he had. So they had to quit fishing, and they went home. And a couple of days later, the neighbor came over and said, look at the fishing pole I found. And a couple of days later, over a couple of miles down, this fishing pole had gotten down to his neighbor's house. And it was his kid's fishing pole. Identical. I mean, what's the odds? The odds of you finding a fishing pole is just as great odds 2 miles later as having two eyeball stories in a family. You know what I mean? I know. It just sounds too good to be true. You know what I mean? Almost like we went up on top of the mountain to some friends, Steve and Lauren. Hey, Lauren. She does listen sometimes. So I'll say, hey, Lauren. And we're going up there for dinner, and we've never been up there and had. It's always a remarkable dinner, you know? And we went up there, and we walked back to the little pond because guess what they gonna do? We're gonna catch our fish, and he's gonna play it right there and go in and cook it. Can you say, yes? Oh, God, it was so good. Lauren, tell Steve do it again. I need to do that again. I think I need him high on the mountain. Okay, that came out wrong. They live on the top of the mountain. That's why I said high on the mountain. Had nothing to do with weed, I promise. I promise. It was just because they're 5 miles on top of the mountain. Anyway, so yeah, fishing stories. I know you got them. I know you got them. And that's what you got to do. You have to listen to those stories and keep telling those stories of your grandparents and your family. And, you know, it's like history. If you've got history in your family, talk about it, even after they're gone. You know? Not after someone's gone, you need to talk about them to remember them. So those funny stories and things that happen, that's how you're going to remember somebody. You know? And there's been so much death in the world these days. There's been death in my family these days. I just buried my brother, you remember. Love you, Robbie. His wife, Beth's doing pretty good, I think. I need to check with her to see if she's got a job interview this week. She's going to have to go back to work after a long time not working because he was an amazing husband and he took care of her. You know what I mean? Well, yesterday, my cousin Scotty, that lives outside of McAllister, he passed away, and he was too young. He passed away from a heart attack. And you know, guys, life is too fucking short. It's too fucking short. So listen to those stories. Tell those stories, people. Embrace those friends. I'd say family, but you know, sometimes friends are as big as family is. Family is. You know? So start sending me some stories. I want to hear stories from you, from your family, from your grandparents, all of those fun things. I want to hear funny stories. Do you have an eyeball story? I don't have a glass eyeball story, but my eyes have seen some messed up shit. Oh. Okay, well, just between us, it has been a hard couple of weeks with all the death. But then I have my friend up on the mountain, Jenny, and she's been living off grid for a couple of years with her ex-husband. They're not remarried, but you know, who the fuck cares? They're living up there. And we've, you know, you've probably heard me talk about her. I try to help them because when they're off grid, I have friends that are off grid on the mountain, way off grid. My off grid mail doesn't come. I have friends off grid that they completely solar, completely water, everything off grid. And then we have Jenny, and they live in a camper with no electric and a generator. And no jobs, nothing. And they're trying to live up there, and they're just not doing very well. And we've tried to talk them into, because she's disabled, that maybe downtown here to get a little apartment because they go by your income, and maybe just have hair and heat and water until that's finished up there. And but you can't make people do shit. You know what I mean? Well, a couple of weeks ago, Jenny got a call that she could get an apartment, and next Monday she gets to move down to an apartment all by herself. Yes, he's decided he's going to stay up there and get it going. And you know, can be a good thing. I hope he gets a job and gets more money so he can get it done faster. But she literally, when I go up there next week to pick her up, I'm going to bring her down, and she gets to start her to see what she wants to do. And, you know, it's probably going to be him finishing the cabin up the mountain and her going back up there. And that's cool. I'm here to help them. But just between us, Jenny's good people. Jenny's good people. And so I've got a lot of stuff from when I lived alone that I might be able to help her with, curtains and stuff. But yeah, I just wanted you to know, just between us, things that were going on in the mountain. And Jenny's moving down next Monday, so I have more to say just between us next week. And I think everybody's doing good. I did have a cousin pass away, and that was just yesterday, so it's still brand new. I don't know what's going on with that. He was too young for a heart attack. You know, people, enjoy your lives, because lives can be short. You know? And just remember, sometimes you got to do the hard stuff to make the good stuff happen. Okay, on to something very odd. I was told one story about a set of keys. Last night, it was from the mountain, and from one of the people on the mountain. And it made me remember of a story that I had. And yeah, so I want to talk about that. We're going to talk about his stories first. His story was, have you ever had that where you look back and you know that there was, in my world, it was a God intervention, an angel or something? But you know, we all have beliefs, whatever you think. He says that every time he got gas, he would pull up, and when he was getting his gas, he would, out of habit, take the keys out and set them on the seat, the passenger seat. And it was just something he did out of habit. He always does that, because then at least somebody has to get the keys and put it in the ignition, which I get the point. He's also 77, so you know what? He can do it any fucking way he wants, if you know what I mean. But he gets back in after getting gas, and he can't find the keys. They are nowhere, he said. He goes, I look there, looked under all the seats, looked around there, looked on my pockets. 5 minutes, 6 minutes of looking. And he goes, it was just crazy. And he goes, then I got back in there because I'm already in the, what am I supposed to do now? And I sat down in the driver's seat. And there are my keys, right there where I normally set them. But he is 100% sure those keys were not there. So, in my mind, I think, a little angel hand was over those set of keys right there, maybe. And the reason for that is, he said he started the car, and a couple of minutes down the road, there was a horrible accident that had just happened. And he says he has no doubt that that was a miracle, because he and his wife would have been probably dead. And all we can think of is, where were the keys? If you know what I mean. See? Miracles do happen, and they can happen. We just, some people, I'm going to say it was a God thing. Some people think it's alien things. Hell, there's even people out there that think it's flat earther things. And, it's okay, but you got to be able to see when the good happens. Hopefully nobody did die in that wreck, Lord, am I the only one that will pass a wreck? And, they say that when you pass a wreck, it's like passing a train wreck. You just have to, neck turn, and you have to see. The first thing I do in my mind is just pray nobody's hurt, because a wreck can be hurtful. I'm just going to stop there, because wrecks can be trigger warning, if you know what I mean. And so, yeah, but I remember driving one night, and I remember I was so tired. I was in high school, and I would go to school from like 7 or so a.m. there in Longview, Texas, and then I would work at like Winn-Dixie at like 3:30 or so after school, and so I might be driving home at 9:30 or 10:30. And I remember being so tired one night, and I'm 19. I have like a 4-month-old baby. I mean, I'm too young to know what the fuck I'm doing, obviously, but I'm doing my best. And I start falling asleep, and then all of a sudden there was this lady right in front of my car, and I like skid to a stop and almost had an accident, but I did not. And of course, I am freaked out because I think I've hit somebody. But you know what? There was not a soul around. Not a soul around. I think it was something to wake me up. I don't know, because I was awake. And I do believe I hear a lot of stories about that. And you know what? It's fucking creepy. I'm a big horror fan. And sometimes those stories and the things you think might be God are still fucking creepy. I know. Sounds weird. Read those war stories in the Bible. Dude, it was like a freak show in God time. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So I love listening to stories like that. I do. Because you just never know what people have went through. So keep your eyes open for those miracles. They're everywhere. Or maybe it's just a freak place. I don't know. A time continuance. There's so much to think about in our brains. Yeah. Okay, so I have some new stickers. And, if anybody wants one, just email at thankgodyournotmychildpodcast@yahoo.com. And I'll be happy to email you a sticker. And just remember, I love doing listener stories. Send those, and go to where you listen to the podcast, and please follow. Need some followers. Get this thing going. Bottom line is, I think it's kind of like my biography. I don't think my kids listen to it. I don't think anybody in my family listens to it. But you know what? One day I might be dead, and they might listen to it. And they'll realize that girl could never shut the fuck up. Hold on. They might know that already. Yeah. Okay. So, anyway, I think I've told you everything I know. So until next time, thank God you're not my child.